Well, I'm not a crook.
I'm the greatest.
I am somebody.
Read my lips.
I have a dream.
Planes left Iranian airspace.
Overcome.
The best is yet to come.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Hello, I'm Ron Reagan. And the question is, how much TV do you watch? How much TV do you watch?
I have to confess, 10 to 12 hours.
10 to 12 hours per day? The average set in America is on 7.2 hours a day. And of course, we Americans spend the other 16.8 hours complaining about what we're watching.
I hate Roseanne the most because she's rude, belligerent, and obnoxious.
Oh, I hate all soap operas.
Not slamming.
Married with Children. Perfect Strangers. I think that's really stupid.
Mindless women, I think I dislike most on television.
Commercials anger me a lot.
And there's way too much violence.
The talk shows, why don't they put anything real on it?
Why don't we put anything real on? That's what I want to know. So, with 50-plus channels available, how bad is television? And how can the wrongs be corrected? What it all boils down to is this. What do the people who put television on the air think of you, the audience? And how can you influence their decisions? Today, we'll explore these questions with producers, a network executive, a cable executive, and right now, two of the country's most prominent critics. Please welcome from USA Today, Matt Roush, and from the Washington Post, Pulitzer Prize-winning TV critic, Tom Shales. Thank you both for being here. Welcome to the show. Tom, is it just me, or does television really bite the big one these days?
It's just you. Well, Matt and I both know it. Well, there's more of it than there ever was. I suppose there's more to hate. That's probably why you think it's so terrible. I'm not sure that we can chart it getting worse or better as the years go by. It's just sort of there like air, and we just have to try and do the best we can to breathe it.
But are you generally dissatisfied with the state of television today?
I don't know. It seems to me, we're heading into a new fall season, and it seems like it's any old season. There's nothing seeming to be new jumping out to, say, put down the remote control, stop grazing, put away the videotape, put down the Nintendo Kids. Everything seems to be a wash of sitcoms. We've got reality shows coming on the air. There are still some great returning dramas and comedies, but the most we can hope for right now is that the returning shows are going to be as good as they ever were. There's not a whole lot now to tell us to keep watching.
What's the worst thing? What do you really hate about TV?
Oh, gosh, commercials, just what everyone hates, especially now on cable, where they have, not only do they have a 6-minute commercial break, but they have 30-minute commercials called infomercials that are disguised as programs where someone is, I don't know, telling you how to, make a killing in real estate or how to bake a cake or whatever it is. The commercials, the wave after wave of commercials, but then also the wave after wave of television. I'm a TV critic. I'm supposed to just love it to death, but I almost find there's just too much now. I mean, it's a little obscene that you can get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and turn it on, and there's an old movie or a talk show or
and
something.
That's not going to change, is it? That's going to get worse.
No, if they could add 25 hours to the day, they would.
And if they could add more channels to the
and more commercials,
which they and more. Oh, of course.
They will add more channels. They're talking about 300 channels in the next few years.
I heard
and of
600 even.
600 channels.
Once fiber optic.
It'll be 599 channels of junk and maybe 1 channel of good stuff.
well, we're going to be 3 MTVs and there's going to be 3 HBOs. That seems a little excessive to me.
Is there that kind of redundancy in television? Do you see that? Is it always derivative? Is it always copying something that's already there?
Well, we have more sitcoms coming on the air this season than have ever been before, and fewer dramas, fewer shows that will engage the emotions. What we have now is a huge wash of shows that seem the same every week, that you just sort of can drift in and drift out of, and people who are watching TV that way may sit there for it, but I'm fearing that the people who aren't watching as much, who maybe only watched, say, a 30-something or a China Beach, the, quote, quality dramas, they're not being given a whole lot new in this fall season to say, hey, TV is okay, keep watching.
There are a few relatively good shows out there, but so many of them seem to go off the air rather quickly.
Yeah, or ABC especially tends to move them around and hide them. It's like the old coconut shell game, right? And China Beach, let's see, what night is that going to be on this week? They make it too hard for viewers because there are just too many channels now anyway. People simply don't, I think they've given up on looking things up in listings and all that. They just sit there with a clicker and they figure it's pot luck, whatever I can find, I'll watch.
Yeah, and I don't think that people will just tune in just because there's a new show on that night. They have to be pretty much convinced that this is going to be a good show. Northern Exposure, perhaps a great ray of hope in the coming year, that this show, which is very unusual, it's quite cleverly written, and it's sort of an hour comedy as opposed to a drama, that it took a while to catch on, and the network let it catch on, and that's a good thing.
We've got a clip from a show that I know you've both seen. It's a new comedy, and it's called Good and Evil on ABC. Let's take a look at that.
What do you mean you're not sure? If this face cream stops the aging process, we'll make history.
Well, like you said, I slipped some of the formula into a shipment to California. People complained their faces practically peeled off.
What do you mean practically?
Well, they did. They peeled off. Their faces are gone, actually. Dissolved.
Totally dissolved. How fascinating.
Well, I don't think they found it fascinating.
You've both seen the show. What do you think?
I liked it. Of course, I would watch Terry Garr, make a 2-minute egg. I think she's just a very entertaining person to watch do almost anything. It's a very nasty, caustic kind of comedy, and it'll turn many people off. There are lots of jokes involving a blind man who doesn't know how to use his cane, and he demolishes this laboratory. Well, of course, W.C. Fields did a similar joke many years ago. So people who like their comedy a little saner and quieter won't like this, but I'm glad it's going to be on the air because it's different than your average happy family sitcom.
Well, the best thing about it is that it does stand out from the wash of family shows and family comedies, that is, but it sort of stands out and grinds it into your stomach. I found the level of humor to be very, like, toilet joke-based and jokes about vomit. And that blind thing, W.C. Fields did it, but I don't think that went on for like 10 minutes. This thing never ends. I found it to be very mendacious, mean-spirited, and it stood out perhaps in the wrong way, but at least I'm happy that it's not just a happy, smiley, 3 kids and a dog kind of show.
Mendacious toilet humor. My next question was going to be about how many commercials there are on television, but right now we have to pause to watch a commercial. We'll be right back.
Mr. Cronkite called. He said he saw my story last night, and he enjoyed it immensely.
Wonderful. I hope the ratings are up.
You two? They're just a meaningless bunch of numbers.
Yes, you're right. But why don't they like us in Denver?
Lucky for me, you're a lousy kisser.
What do you mean?
Janine says you have very dry lips. I put Vaseline on mine every night before I go to bed. If you ever get another date, you might want to do that.
We've heard from the critics, and now in our discussion of TV, it's time to hear from the people who make television. Joining us is the man who created L.A. Law, Hill Street Blues, and Doogie Howser, M.D., Stephen Bochco. And also here is the creator and executive producer of Murphy Brown, Diane English. Welcome to you both. Stephen, you've said, at least I've seen you quoted as saying that art, by definition, must have a strong point of view. Sounds reasonable. How easy to convince network executives of that?
I've never felt that I had to. I have never had a network executive say to me, eliminate a point of view. What you'll often get from broadcast standards is a request to balance your point of views, and often we'll have fights about that, because I think the moment you start balancing point of views, you lose drama, you lose conflict.
Well, it's sort of the same thing, then. You're diluting a point of view when you balance it in that way.
But we don't do it, and frankly, that one seems to have gone away.
We were talking a little bit about why good shows fail. Is part of the problem that the trigger is pulled so quickly on them? You have 2 weeks or however long it is, and if the numbers aren't good, then you're out of luck?
In some cases, I mean, I think the trigger deserves to be pulled on some shows pretty early. In the cases of others, there's just a patience factor that has to kick in. In the case of our show, we didn't premiere with incredible numbers, and a lot of people said that we would never make it into the top 10 because our show was too smart. But here we are in the top 10 3 years later, and kind of the keystone of a network. So, you know, patience does pay off.
Too smart is something you hear all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm relatively new in this business compared to y'all, but that's something that amazed me. You know, every time you turn around, you're being told you're too smart. You're too smart. You got to. The audience is dumb.
Well,
you got to play it dumb.
We have never talked down to our audience, and I know Stephen feels the same way. And there's a kind of famous memo that came to us after 6 episodes of Murphy Brown were produced, and they get focus groups together and they show the episodes to the focus group, and then the executives in charge of research write up the memos to the producers. And one of the things that it said about our show is that we should stop making references to people like Golda Meir and Margaret Mead because people didn't know who they were, and only a very small number of people would ever get those jokes.
Anybody here heard of Golda Meir? Yeah? Okay. So they were wrong.
Thank God.
Well, what about that? What about the memos and stuff and the dumbing up of television? What do you guys think about that?
Dumbing up compared to when? I don't know. I don't think it's.
Well, I don't think we have to
getting
compare it. I think just generically speaking.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I think you're right. I think Stephen's right in terms of the fact that when they cry out for balance and they cry out for perhaps tinkering and massaging from the network point of view, they don't want to shake things up or offend people too mightily. And my feeling is they're not offending enough people. They're not rattling enough cages with many of the shows on TV. And, you know, that makes network television seem less special than the movie-going experience or sometimes the cable watching experience when you can get some of the stronger language and the stronger, you know.
Yeah, isn't balance often a euphemism for blandness?
Yeah, it is. You know, Norman Lear once pointed out that when people are angry at what you're doing, it doesn't mean that they don't like what you're doing. It means, in fact, that you've engaged them in a way that most things on television don't. You get angry mail from people. You know, I always take that as a compliment. And I appreciate it. And I always respond to the mail because I know that I've tapped into some vein of feeling in an audience that is really our lifeblood.
Mm-hmm. Tom, what do you think of Murphy Brown and some of Stephen's shows?
Be careful, Tom. You're only that far away from me.
Well, if only you'd invited a couple of really schlocky producers here. Matt and I could have had a lot of fun and scored a lot of cheap shots. But I suppose every show you could complain about something in terms of political content. I think that both Stephen's and Diane's shows sometimes become soapboxy, and I'm not sure that Hollywood producers should have this particular advantage over everybody else in America who might like access to television. Another thing that bothers me about Murphy Brown is that the scenes, now this will sound trifling, the scenes are so darn short, you know? They don't seem developed in play-like form. When All in the Family was shown again by CBS this summer, I was shocked that the first episode was exactly 2 scenes long. First act, commercial, second act. And these scenes were developed and their relationship seemed to have more time to breathe. And I suppose this is because the attention span is shortening. Is that why scenes are shorter?
No, I don't think so. It's we do about 5 scenes a show, which is short by a lot of standards. A lot of new writers that come on to our show are used to 7, 8, and 9 scenes a show. And our first scene is normally 15 to 20 pages, which is... And then subsequently after that, we sort of get in and out of things. But it's the newsroom kind of feeling. We like to try to keep the pace.
You can jump all over them on the break. Don't go away. We'll be right back with 2 programming executives who decide exactly what you see, the president of ABC Entertainment and the senior vice president of HBO.
Oh, Howard. I'm going to blow my brains out right on the air, right in the middle of the 7 o'clock news.
Get a hell of a rating, I'll guarantee you that.
Welcome back. Welcome back. We're talking about what's wrong with television with Tom Shales, Matt Roush, Diane English, Stephen Bochco. You just saw one of the classic images of a network executive in the film network, and joining us now is a real network executive responsible for ABC's primetime schedule, ABC Entertainment President Robert Iger. Also here is an executive from the world of cable television. Chris Albrecht is Senior Vice President of Programming for HBO. Thank you for being on the show. Appreciate it. Bob, is network programming too timid? Too bland?
No, I don't think so. I think there are times when we attempt to sanitize the product a little bit too much with an eye toward programming to what is a rather diverse audience. But I think overall it's not too timid. In fact, when compared to the so-called golden age, I think it's far less timid today than it ever was.
Well, that's sort of changing time, so you're being very delicate and political here. I think a lot of people disagree with you. I think they say it sucks, basically. It really stinks. It's too bland. What do you, critics, help me out here. Is he soft pedaling us here?
I hate to defend the networks, but you have to look back a year. They tried some radically different shows last year. Cop Rock by Mr. Bochco, Hull High on NBC, Life Stories on NBC, The Flash for what it was worth on CBS, stuff that really departed from the norm. The audience avoided it in droves, as the saying goes, and so this year you can't blame them too much for being a little gun-shy. Of course, they've been gun-shy for 40 years.
You don't have a contract with ABC, do you?
Yeah, right.
He does now.
Does cable do it better?
I think cable does it differently. We've had to do it differently since the inception of cable because we were competing in a marketplace where the networks had the lion's share of the audience, and in order to attract attention and be worth paying for, we had to be different.
It's, you know, you go into these meetings and stuff, and they always talk about the audience. Do you really know who the audience is? How are the ratings legitimate? All these demographic studies they'll hit you with right away?
Do we know who the audience is? Well, we know we're programming on a network basis. We're programming to the entire country. And there are more than 200 million people living in this country, more than 90 million television households. So the audience is not one person. The audience is many different people of all ages and economic backgrounds, different sexes, different races. So it's very difficult to say this is the audience and this is what the audience wants. It's probably one of the most difficult things that we have to face as network executives.
Yet in a lot of those meetings, I've been in a few, you hear the audience is stupid. The audience is ignorant. You got to talk down to the audience.
I haven't been in a meeting since I've been president of ABC Entertainment where we've referred to the audience as being stupid. So,
you know, come on, you know that happens out there. You know people talk.
Well, there's a great example of that. It's not on Bob's network. It's on CBS, where they have created a show for a Saturday night time period. Saturday night is a ghetto where no one is watching anything but the comedies on NBC.
Because we're all out carousing.
But they have created a show called P.S. I Love You, which is bad enough for Saturday night in their minds. It is total wash. There's not a single creative impulse behind this show. It's totally escapist, and it is numbing, jarring. But the reason that it's there is because they figure if it's this bad, it's contempt for the audience to put a show like that on Saturday night, just figuring like it's low risk, low rent, I don't know. But the fact that those shows still make it on the air without a single emotional fiber in it.
Yeah, you'll never have a network contract, Matt.
Never.
Never.
No one's asked, you know.
How many Nielsen families are there?
The Nielsen sample roughly has 4,000 television households. And I said earlier there are over 90 million television households. I think it's 92 million and change. It's an extraordinarily low sample, and in terms of measuring what the so-called audience is watching, it's a very, very difficult situation.
Do you as producers hate the Nielsen ratings? Do you hate that kind of stuff? The demographics, the studies?
I don't trust them at all. At all. Who are these people? We don't have their names. We don't have their addresses. We're not allowed to know who they are. I mean, what happened to the time when there was somebody like a Bill Paley who said, I like that show, I want to put that on my network, and I want to keep it there?
What do you think, Stephen?
You know, we live with ratings. Ratings exist because they measure they measure the number of people who are watching, which in turn determines advertising rates and stuff like that. So whether we like it or not, we, by and large, live and die by those things. But Boy, I'd sure love to see him eliminated.
I think you said the magic word there, advertising rates. Yeah. Speaking of that, we have to go to a commercial. We'll be right back.
You are watching Fox 5.
I hate this fish. You didn't even catch this fish. You and your junk car. You never even learned how to play. Going, gone. You and your sports, that's all you ever do. Football, baseball, basketball, hockey, and golf. Golf is so boring. That's it. Everything goes.
Not the jeans.
Introspect.
Here's one attack, walking the ball up the floor. He looks at a tight zone.
Not everyone uses the #1 antibacterial deodorant soap.
He's lost possession. He comes up empty. The ball goes out of.
Aren't you glad you use Dial?
It doesn't get any closer than this.
Sears Labor Day paint sale means huge savings on 2 interior paints. Easy Living Premium Satin or Low Luster Semi-Gloss. Your choice, just $13.99. Sale ends Saturday, September 7th at Sears.
You want a hit? No.
Good for you.
What's there? Oh. Dad, I'm not gonna yell at you. I just want you to know I am really, really disappointed.
We're back after a cheap shot by my executive producer there, talking about the state of television with critics Tom Shales, Matt Roush, Robert Iger, Chris Albrecht, Diane English, and Stephen Bochco. We just saw a clip from Dream On, which you probably wouldn't see on network television. Cable can do things that network TV can't, but is it doing it responsibly?
Are you asking me, are we doing the audience a disservice by putting this program on?
No, no, I'm saying that you can do things that you...
I think that our approach to television is that since we have less restrictions than the networks, we can be more honest. And I think that we approach our programs from that point of view. We also know that we're programming our original stuff in between sometimes $20, $30, $40 million feature films. And we have to make programs that will keep the audience in between those and not get them to switch off, you know, to other networks, be it cable or free.
Bob, episode of 30-something featuring homosexuality. The rerun is canceled. The steam room scene from Sisters, in which multiple orgasms are discussed, out on network television. Is that a mistake, or are you doing a service to the audience, or just buckling under the pressure from the advertisers?
Well, I can't speak for Sisters, which was an NBC show, although had it been my show, I would have allowed that line to have stayed in. Although frequently it's not my decision in the end, but I would have fought to keep it in. In terms of the episode of 30-something, it was my decision not to rerun the episode. We face an incredibly difficult problem often in our business when sponsors, who are free to do so, pull their commercials out of our shows because there's content in that particular show that they feel is offensive. You mentioned homosexuality. At times it's drug use, violence. I read recently a report that I got that a sponsor actually pulled out of a show because there was a reference to tainted meat. Ooh. As a network programmer, I think I have to ignore that. However, when we ran the initial episode of 30-something, we lost over $1 million from sponsors who decided to pull out because of the inclusion of homosexuality, and rerunning it, we would have not been able to put one commercial in that show. And I'm running a business as well, and I thought I had already given the creator the creative freedom to include that material in the show, and had exposed that material to the entire country, should the country choose to watch it, and didn't feel I owed anyone, audience or creator in that case, I didn't owe anyone a rerun. We don't guarantee we're going to rerun our shows, and I made a decision, which was a business decision, not to rerun the episode.
Do business decisions, do you think, get in the way sometimes of creative television?
Yes, I think jumpiness is still a kind of epidemic at the networks, and it's too bad they can't insulate shows from sponsors. Sponsors are the jumpy ones, and when... when any kind of a nutty evangelist in the Deep South decides to target a show, he calls up 3 sponsors and that'll do it. I mean, if a network gets 10,000 letters, if a network gets 10,000 letters from viewers saying keep Twin Peaks on the air, they don't pay much attention. But if one jumpy evangelist and one nutty sponsor, or the other way around, protests, they get very, very nervous. It's too bad.
I tell you what, 6, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, when the networks had 90% of the viewing audience captive, they were much bolder.
Because they could afford to be?
They could afford to be. The advertisers were lining up at the door. If one advertiser said, I'm out of here, you know, 10 more fill the vacuum. That's not happening today. We're in a shrinking market, and advertisers have infinitely more power by virtue of that today in economic terms than they had a half a dozen years ago. We're feeling the pinch of that.
Does that word filter down to you from the advertiser through executive to producer? Is that how it works?
We've wanted to take, you know, a few risks in the past 3 years, and we've been able to, and we've had support. We've had advertisers put pressure on the network. We've had my new best friend, Reverend Wildman, whose targeted shows made, it's like the new blacklist. This guy has made lists of shows, and he's taken what he finds offensive. He'll take the shows and he'll say, well, homosexuality and drug use and violence and so on. The only thing he could find to say about Murphy Brown was, this is what he called our bitchiness. This is what we were guilty of. But yet he manages to get people to listen to him.
Did he define bitchiness?
And,
or was that just
well, you know, I think we define it pretty well.
She's going to get to know Reverend Wildman a lot better if the word abortion ever crosses Murphy Brown's lips.
That's right.
Because if she's pregnant, she even flirts with the idea, you know, they're going to be coming down like vultures. Think about when NBC ran the movie Roe versus Wade a couple of years ago, and you know the network had to take a major public stand to say we want this on the air, and Bob should be applauded for putting the homosexuality episode of 30-something on the air once. You know, honestly, there ought to be more sex on television, but it's got to be honest sex. You know, the leering sex that happens on, say, like the sitcoms like The Golden Girls, with those oversexed old women, that kind of thing. That's not what I would fight for, but I think that the honest portrayal of sex in a modern contemporary show like 30-something needs to be encouraged by the likes of us when it is done well written movingly. When Murphy Brown encounters these life crises in her life, if they are handled as well as this show has handled most of the other ones, you know.
Chris, honest portrayal of sex on cable television, or does it become gratuitous after a while? There's, you know, we've heard the word cable edge. Right. And cable edge often means a gratuitous display of these.
Dream On seems to have a quota level in which there seems to have to be bare breasts bared in almost every episode.
Is there a breast quota, Chris?
No, there is no breast quota. But you know, we used to do a show called The Hitchhiker, and we used to test the show by asking audiences what attributes they liked. And always at the top was story, characters, and always at the bottom was nudity, language. And yet somehow the episodes that had nudity in it always had the highest viewership. So something was wrong there, and we couldn't quite figure out what it was. But,
no, but we'll watch it.
We'll watch it.
Yeah.
We'll watch it. That's right. And the networks, I mean, it's a little hypocritical, because you know those sort of prime access shows, the 7:30 shows, like Two on the Town or whatever, they're always going off to some island. They've got what I call the boob cam. Right? It's always, they've learned how to shoot a breast from every conceivable angle. As long as you don't show a nipple, you're okay. Isn't it kind of hypocritical? You won't show a breast, but you'll get every, you know.
Well, I think there's a double standard. I think, by and large, the viewer is not making the distinction the television executive or the standards and practices person thinks he's making. I think the lines are completely blurred. The bottom line is someone sits at home with a remote control device frequently and watches television. And I don't think they say, well, I'm watching a network or I'm watching cable. They're watching television, particularly the younger generation. We're bringing up a generation of children right now who believe cable is an inalienable right, probably doesn't even know that their parents are paying for it. And they're not saying, well, I can't watch cable tonight because there might be nudity on it. I don't think people are watching the same way we think they are.
Well, that's a heck of a good reason for networks to significantly loosen their own standards, because there it is. You know, how do you hold on to that dwindling audience, and how do you hold on to new audience as it grows up in a very different medium, when with the flick of a button they can access major motion pictures on HBO that have nudity, have violence, have have sex, both gratuitous as well as responsible, and a degree of grittiness in terms of language that I think gives writers, directors, filmmakers infinitely more freedom in terms of what they do than that which we have in network television. I don't know how I can compete. I'm not on an even playing field anymore.
Stephen, you must have a clock in your head. You know exactly when we're going to go to a commercial and you get the last word in. We'll be right back.
Where the hell did you learn that?
You mean the Venus butterfly?
The Venus?
Venus butterfly.
Stuart, I'm no prude. I like sex. Especially like it with you. But I'm 36 years old. And I have never, I mean never, in my entire life, ever experienced anything like the Venus butterfly.
Well, I'm glad you liked it.
We're back with our panel, and that, of course, was the famous Venus butterfly scene from L.A. Law. Bob, you were talking about zapping and remote controls and things like that. Is that changing the whole way you program television now?
I don't think it's changed the whole way we program television, but I think we have to be more conscious of the way in which the viewer watches television. And I think it has affected the way in which a viewer watches certain shows.
I wanted to ask Mr. Bochco, why you guys made an attempt on a black and white couple on L.A. Law for about a minute and a half, and then all of a sudden it disappeared. Why not? I happen to be mulatto, and I like to see that on TV because we don't have a lot of role models of black and white couples.
I think if it works, it's great. If there's a chemistry there, pursue it. We never got any particular... We got some really rude mail, but we never got any broadcast standards flack or network flack of any kind about it.
Stephen, since the subject of minorities has come up, I want to play a little clip. It's a new show called Rock.
You still work on the docks?
I got me a much better job with the city.
Yeah?
I'm a garbage man.
No, seriously, what are you doing?
I'm a garbage man. It happens to be a fine job with great perks.
Yeah, I bet.
Look, you see this refrigerator?
Yeah, I see.
You see this table?
Yeah.
Well, you come here. Let me show you something. You see this lamp?
Yeah, I see the lamp.
You see this rug?
See the rug.
You see this piano?
Yeah.
Didn't cost me a cent. All stuff that people threw out.
That couch I'm gonna sleep on too?
Well, there you go. There are black people on television. That will make some people happy. He's a garbage man. That's going to make some people unhappy. How are we treating minorities and women in television, do you suppose?
I just think the audience shouldn't expect every character with a kind of defined persona, whether it's racial or sexual or whatever it is, to serve as a role model necessarily, to have to represent an entire race or kind of people or occupation or whatever. I wish we could relax a little about television and not expect expect it to reflect so much our own personal grievances.
Chris, that's your show. What do you think?
I think it was what we wanted to do was try and do an honest portrayal of a black middle-class family. That was the point of view that we approached that show from, and I think it's really important because I don't think that there has been that attempt so far on network television.
You have a panel of 6 people, 5 are men, 1's a woman, and you're all white. Is that representative of the powers that be in TV?
Or just our booking?
I know my experience is that scripts don't have gender and they don't have color. There's just so much mediocrity in this business that when you find somebody who's got something to offer, you grab them.
All right. We'll come back with a little more after this. Stick around.
I seem to be inept at everything except my work. I'm good at my work. So I confine myself to that. All I want out of life is a 30 share and a 20 rating.
We're back. More questions from the audience. Yes, sir.
I personally think the viewers are considered last in the television process because, and this is basically to network executives, it seems like you always consider the advertiser first, the affiliate second, then the competitiveness of what your competition is doing, and then the viewer gets the shaft because he's considered last.
Can you give me some examples of shows that have been canceled that the viewers really wanted to watch in large numbers?
China Beach.
Well, let's talk
China
about
Beach,
that.
Twin Peaks,
Actually,
30-something.
You're looking at the person who canceled those shows. So,
we know.
And in all cases, and there were individual reasons for canceling each one, we felt that we let the audience speak. Twin Peaks is a perfect example of that. The viewers had a chance to watch Twin Peaks. They watched it initially, and then if you were to look at the ratings for every episode of that show, you'd find that they decreased over the course of 2 seasons, and ultimately we took it off the air. In my opinion, that's letting the viewer speak, not the sponsor, not the, you mentioned the affiliate, that's letting the viewer speak. If the viewers were there in droves, we would have kept it on the air. And by the way, I like the show, and as a network executive, would have loved to have seen that show succeed.
But why did you move it?
Why did you move it?
You're referring to a strategy that we had at ABC involving Saturday night. We thought Saturday night, by and large, was a real wasteland in terms of television, that the networks were not giving the viewers a choice, and we made a decision a year ago to program Saturday night with what we consider to be smart shows or quality shows, and China Beach and Twin Peaks were those 2 shows.
Tom, are you buying the rationale here?
Looking at that clip from Network, Faye Dunaway played the head of programming at this fictitious network, and I'm thinking about this, and unless I'm wrong, and I'm sure I'll be corrected if I am, that was the only woman to ever be the head of programming at a network, and that was fiction. It's never happened, and we know from looking at figures and all sorts of things that women are more selective viewers than men. Maybe it would be... I was hoping for some cheap applause. Maybe it would help to have women in it. I don't think the men have done that great a job for the past 40 years.
Here's a woman.
Thank you. The thing I'd like to say is I don't think the Nielsen ratings represent the American people any more than the politicians do. And just like we have over 60% of Americans who don't vote because they don't feel represented. So too, I think a lot of Americans turn the channel because they don't feel represented. It seems like anything that really has substance, with the exception of your shows, of course, which I really do love, they seem to be pulled. And I think this notion that if 10,000 viewers send in a letter saying they want Twin Peaks on, and one far-rightist says no, the advertisers dominate, and I think that's a big concern for Americans.
You have to remember that the gentleman said that they don't think about the viewers. Viewers are actually kind of a byproduct in this whole process.
Yeah, I think it's pathetic.
Viewers are being sold to advertisers. Shows are not being sold to viewers. So that's one way it's even more unfair than the Electoral College.
Wait a second, Tom. That's not true with new shows. We're not asking advertisers before we put a show on the air whether this is a show they want to buy or not, and then we don't make our decision based on that. We make a decision based on, and we're paid to do this, what we think the audience wants to watch.
Based on research, Mason?
Not all the time, no. As a matter of fact, and Cop Rock is a perfect example of that, and we do test or research of many of our new shows. Cop Rock got terrible research. It was rejected by the audience that we tested it in front of, and yet we put it on the air because we believed it was good enough and deserved to be on our network. That's true with Twin Peaks as well. It was true with 30-something. So I don't think that we're going to the sponsor and saying, what do you want us to put on the air? Admittedly, once a show is on the air, and I'm not necessarily standing up for the research or the ratings gathering system. We don't own Nielsen. But once a show is on the air, the only measurement that we have right now is the Nielsen system.
But also, the audience has changed so significantly. I mean, everyone talks about the golden age of television. You know, the gap between the poor people and the rich people in this country is the greatest that it's ever been. You know, you have hundreds of thousands of people that are homeless in this country. The amount of money that's spent on education is the least that it's ever been, you know, percentage-wise. And I think that it's very difficult to program for an audience when the audience is in such a state of flux. I mean, the so-called golden age of television had a much different audience out there to receive these programs than the audience that watches television today.
You know,
I saw there's rationalization for canceling each of the individual shows that Bob was talking about in terms of ratings and in terms of blah, blah, research, you name it. But the overall impact is, I think, one for the viewer of disaffection and sadness as they were watching these shows play out their final episodes in these last few weeks and in the spring, and there's not that much new interesting stuff to take their place, and I think that the drift is going to increase this fall greatly because of that.
Bob, you were saying that new shows aren't targeted to advertisers. I've been involved with a pilot, and the watchword on that pilot was advertiser friendly. That was how they were selling the show.
A network show?
Well, it was good. Hopefully it was going to be a network show. It didn't turn into anything.
You know what we producers would love the audience to do is that if you feel you're not being represented by the Nielsen ratings, then you need to take out a pencil and a piece of paper and write to these guys. Because the only letters I ever get, and it seems like the only people who take the time to express an opinion are the people who don't like something. They have a bone to pick with you. But if you like China Beach, if you love 30-something, you need to let them know. And if you haven't let them know, then you are guilty and you deserve ultimately the network programming that you get. You know, you're too apathetic sometimes, and you know, there's a lot of complaint about the Nielsen's not representing.
Let me just throw something out to you. Politics and television are a lot alike, and neither one of those values an intelligent public. Politicians want you to vote for George Bush, or maybe you shouldn't, and television wants you to buy products that you shouldn't be interested in.
Well, you're raising a real interesting point here. You know, at the risk of making a mistake, I'll say something that Bob can't say, perhaps as directly, and that is that all of us are involved in a business, and it is an enormously expensive business. The cost of making an hour of television is staggering. Now, you could spend a lot of time arguing about whether it should cost that much, why it costs that much, but for the purposes of what I'm saying, it does cost a huge amount of money. And when you're in a business, and your cost of doing that business is X amount of dollars, you can't keep making a product that isn't bringing you back a return on your investment. That's a fundamental fact of business that Diane lives by to a great extent, I live by to a great extent, and you know, the people running networks live by to a great extent. Now, how do you deal with the problem? That's where we can differ. You know, I'll say let's be bolder in our programming. Bob may come up with a different kind of a programming strategy, but the fact is we're in a business, and when things aren't generating income, you dump them.
Quick question.
Well, if everyone's talking about advertisers, does HBO even deal with advertisers, and do they listen to Nielsen ratings? I mean, they don't have to compete.
HBO doesn't have advertisers, and we look at Nielsen ratings as an indication. If people are watching our shows, we figure that maybe they'll continue to pay for HBO, but it is a great boon not to have to do this, and it is really difficult to be creative in a business environment. The two are not mutually inclusive.
Have you considered using 900 numbers to see really who is watching rather than selling out to the Nielsen's and the advertisers? And actually asking people who's watching this show?
I always thought that would be a great experiment for one night, is to set up a system in which you can check your Nielsen's against people who really are watching the screen.
Does anybody in this audience watch television shows ever because they're bad? They're so bad they're good, they're just stupid, and you have fun with it? Yeah, a few hands. Well, I do. My wife and I do all the time. Maybe we're weird. We'll be back in a minute.
I feel like TV's turned into a big advertising thing. It's just a lot of money involved. It's not the good shows that you used to have years ago.
It seems like TV appeals to the least common denominator, and there's not enough creative, intelligent choices out there for the viewers.
I think that's lowest common denominator, but anyway, we've got time for one more question, quick one from everybody on the panel. The year is 2001. It's Thursday. It's 10 p.m. What's the top-rated show? Tom?
Either Cheers, which will run forever, or Meet Your Critic, where TV critics...
I'd like to think it's going to be something as much fun to watch as LA Law, but I'm afraid if the economics continue, it's going to be something cheap to produce, like America's Most Violent Real Detectives kind of thing.
Bob? Say Doogie Howser, senior citizen doctor.
How about you, Chris?
Reruns of The Honeymooners.
Diane?
Well, Murphy Brown, or probably some talk show starring Reverend Wildman.
Stephen, you got the last word here.
Thursday, 10 o'clock in 10 years, there's going to be a show of mine, and it's going to be an R-rated drama, and a genuine R-rated drama, and it'll be the highest-rated hour on television.
All right, very good. We got to go now. I want to thank our guests, Tom Shales, Matt Roush, Robert Iger, Chris Albrecht, Diane English, and Stephen Bochco. And remember, like the old song says, the revolution will not be televised. Good night.
What are the repercussions of gangs moving into urban areas? Join Ron and his guests, Jim Brown, and former gang members, tomorrow on The Ron Reagan Show.
Life is a 30 share and a 20 rating.
Tonight, live from Studio 2 at CNBC, it's Talk Live with comedian Bill Rafferty.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Talk Live. I'm Bill Rafferty. Talk Live is part of CNBC's Talk Weekend, and the talk starts at 7 p.m. Eastern Time with John McLaughlin, Friday through Sunday. Then it's different Talk Live hosts each night at 8 and 10 with Dick Cavett sandwiched in between. He's a little guy, and we slip him in there about 9:30. And I'm going to be your host now for the next 90 minutes. And I should tell you a little bit about myself. I was a stand-up comedian. That's how I started in California. I would show up any place there was a microphone, you know, in your closet, 15 minutes by a parking meter, any place there was a check, I was there. But most of you people probably remember me as one of the hosts and the roving reporter for NBC's Real People. So my claim to fame is I look like somebody you went to camp with. I look familiar. And that's why they picked me to host Talk Live here tonight. Let me tell you right now that I'm here as the host of Talk Live with a great lineup of guests. The head writers for Late Night with David Letterman and Saturday Night Live are going to be here to talk about, what else? Comedy, writing. Comedy's very big, as we all know, in the United States today. So if you got any questions or any aspirations, good time to call in. And don't forget, you can call in at any time. And, of course, we have with us, to wrap up the show tonight, one of the all-time great musicians, one of the jazz greats, a gentleman by the name of Max Roach. He's a drummer, and he's terrific. And, of course, again, we've got a toll-free number. It's going to come up on Steve O'Donnell, head writer, of course, of Late Night with David Letterman, and Jim Downey, head writer of Saturday Night Live. Please welcome them. There they are. My apologies to you, Steve, because I called you Kenny O'Donnell in the tease that I did. I'm very upset.
Actually, I liked it pretty well. I've changed my monogram.
Kenny O'Donnell. Well, if you have any doubt, this is three Irish guys talking treason. This is what this is going to be. We're down at the pub doing the whole thing. You guys have got the job. You have got the jobs. Comedy is the hottest thing in show business today. Guys are pulling down enormous amounts of money to go out there and get the yucks. And I'm going to start with you, Jim. I mean, did you ever think you were going to get to this job? I mean, hosting, producing and being a head writer of a preeminent show in the United States.
I didn't really figure out I was doing this for a living until about 5 years ago. I only got into it because I had wasted my education and